Hello and welcome. I am Leora from Womankind, and it's another warm welcome to another Cyclical Living Unwrapped series chat with exploring the gifts and challenges of cyclical life with experts in the field of menstruation, perimenopause, and cyclical living. And today I am so happy to welcome Tessa Venuti Sanderson. Hi there, Tessa.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
Good to see you. So Tessa is Tessa's PhD and is passionate about rites of passage. She is a senior yoga teacher and trainer, specialising in pregnancy and postnatal yoga, birth trauma, and is the co-founder of the State of Birth Symposium. Exciting stuff. So that's later in the year, isn't it?
Yeah, November.
She is a menstrual health advocate running celebration days for girls, the Know Your Cycle online course, retrospective Menarche Ceremonies, and one-to-one Menstruality Medicine Circles. Tessa is also author of 3 books on periods. So there's Ruby Luna's Curious Journey, and that's for 5+ year olds. And there's Ruby Luna's Moontime. She's grown up a little bit and she's 8+. And Colour Your Cycle. So that's an Inner Seasons Mandala colouring book. And she's also co-authoring an upcoming guide to facilitating talking circles. You're busy.
Yeah, I make the most of my summer.
You certainly do. Okay, well, let's head straight into our seasonal exploration. So, Tessa, what would you say is your summer superpower?
I think it's that burst of estrogen just makes me super productive. I make the most of it. But I was also thinking about it in a different angle. 2 years ago, I started lifting weights as a way to, prepare as I get older, good quality of life as I get older. And what I really noticed, because I track the weights I'm lifting and where I am in my cycle, that estrogen is like this superpower. I can lift more weights at that stage in my cycle. And then when it gets further around, say into the premenstruum, it really changes. And if I didn't know about the cycle, I might think, oh God, what's going on with me? Am I not trying hard enough? But it is directly hormones. So estrogen does actually feel like a superpower, and it affects differently how our ligaments work and how our tendons work. So yeah, I feel, because I'm right at the beginning of perimenopause, I'm in the early stages, my cycles have shortened, but I feel like I've got higher estrogen than ever before in my cycling years. And I think that's something that's not really so known about, because the media seem to be so obsessed with it being about deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've noticed with the exercise is if I don't exercise and don't get a good sweat on, then around ovulation, I get really sore breasts.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody has estrogen dominance, exercising and sweating is important.
That's okay. So
help with balancing hormones. So when in the summer holidays, when I was out of my normal routine, I really felt the difference physically and also mentally as well, not having that regular exercise in my life.
Oh, so that's really well. So it's like you've done your own research on yourself.
Yeah, I think it's from years of tracking my cycle. I am just really aware of how I'm feeling from week to week.
Yeah.
And I'm just so glad of that. I mean, I teach pregnancy yoga, and what I see sometimes in class is that there'll be a 12-year gap between the last baby and the current baby, because somebody thought, oh, well, I'm getting towards perimenopause and maybe not being quite so careful around contraception, and they actually might be the most fertile that they've been in their life. And hey, baby,
yeah,
they come along to pregnancy yoga. So I might not realize that if I wasn't charting so carefully.
Yeah.
I might not realize the signs of all this estrogen.
And it's so refreshing to hear about estrogen dominance rather than the, as you say, the narrative out there is, oh, deficiency. So yeah, it's and as we were talking earlier, I'm in a similar situation that I've never felt so much estrogen surging in at the age of 53. So yeah, I can understand why you are seeing these unexpected pregnancies. Yeah, it can catch us. Thank you. So what would you say trips you up in your summer, in this estrogen dominant summer?
It is that classic of saying yes to too many things. And I think before I started charting my cycle, and maybe until a sort of year into it and really beginning to understand what was happening, I get all these ideas in spring and start acting on everything. Or people would say, could you do this? Can you do a talk about that? And I'm like, yeah, that all sounds exciting. And then my cycle was longer than it is now. I'd get to day 21 and I would just feel like I fell off a cliff. Because suddenly I thought, what have I done? I can't do all of that. I might feel like I can during the ovulation stage and in a summer, but beyond that, I just realized I've taken on too much. So over the years, I've really worked to pace myself. And my kind of go-to phrase is, oh, let me think about that. I don't say yes straight away.
Yes.
Like I might get excited. Oh, that sounds like a good opportunity, but I won't hit reply. Or if somebody's on the phone, I won't say yes straight away. I'll say, let me check my diary. Let me come back to you.
Yeah. Oh,
and then,
beautifully measured.
That just means that I can prioritize, check, is this really something that I want to do? And it doesn't mean that it's always something that has to be one of my priorities, but I just check in. Maybe it's like a passion project, and you just do get really excited about it. But I might say, well, I can't this month, but I would love to next month.
Yeah, it's a skill. It really is a muscle. Well, you doing your weight, it's really a muscle that we can build and work, isn't it? Because
yeah, I think you have to change your conditioning. I think for a lot of women, we tend to be people pleasers and say our default is, oh yes, I'd love to help. So to change that habit and that conditioning can take some work initially. And obviously it can be easier if it's an email or a text message or whatever it is, rather than somebody asking face to face. That might take longer to get good at.
Thank you. And it's so important because as you said, that push of estrogen really almost forces the yes out of us, doesn't it? So it's it's a hugely important aspect of managing those summer days. So when you head to autumn, what supports you in your premenstrual phase?
Well, I mean, it's September when we're recording this, so I've been really feeling as a oof recently, because when I'm in my inner autumn and it's outer autumn as well, it's like a layering up, an amplification of what's happening. So I'm currently day 8, but when I had my last inner autumn, it was just beginning to feel outside like actually we were heading into the outer autumn as well. And I remember, like, the last 3 years, I found September really hard, really noticeably hard. And I think, yeah, there's that sort of going back to school thing, that sort of feeling of new things starting. But I think it's very much a time, for whatever reason, I seem to go into reflection mode and start questioning everything. And so what I've learned is it does change. And I get through September and I feel much better in October. So I know that for myself, but some days it's easier to remember that than others. So what I've really taken to doing is saying to people around me, if I start getting in a bit of a funk, oh, doubting things, just remind me, this happened last September and the September before, and actually it was fine. And I think it's a bit like in the autumn, it was like that cliff I was talking about that I used to have. But yes, it's all amazing, and then
yeah.
I feel like that happens in September. Maybe it's, you've had more. I don't teach as much over the summer holidays. I spend as much time with the girls as I can. And so I slowed down. And I think it's that coming back and trying to gear up again. Because I love all the stuff I do. I want to do it. But it's that gearing up again is really hard. And you start to think, oh, can I actually manage these things? So for me, it's having those reminders around that I will get back to an even keel. So again, it's not only when you're sort of charting your cycle on a sort of monthly basis, but for me, it's keeping an eye on what's happening over a whole year. And I find that patterns repeat. And that's been hugely transformative, really, because otherwise, I remember in particular one year I was doing a master's. It was in nutrition and exercise at Bristol, a really fascinating course. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole then, and I remember going to see the counsellor on the campus and just say, I just feel like I'm a bit lost, and I was so excited about coming to do this master's, but and it's September finished and I was fine again. So it's beginning to recognize those sort of meta patterns, I think, can be very freeing.
Very freeing. And something you said that is hugely important is that you communicate to those around you.
Yeah. And also to my daughters.
Which we're not encouraged to do. So
no.
That's a huge takeaway from what you've said. A huge takeaway.
And I want my daughters growing up feeling that's a normal thing to do as well. So I tell them as well, I say, this time of year I find difficult. How is it for you going back to school, and all these expectations, and linking it into their hormones. These will change over a month, they'll change over a year. There's lots of different factors, environmental factors, the weather, that have an impact.
And that possibility of adding another layer on there is that you're saying that you'll feel as though you're at the beginning of perimenopause, and that is an autumnal time of life.
Yeah, so there's a third layer.
There is another layer on there. So there's life autumn, there's outer autumn, and there's your inner autumn. So, that's
yeah, and I do find myself more thinking about the things that I'm doing and prioritizing and thinking, well, in 5 years, do I still imagine myself doing these things, or actually what will keep nourishing me, what keeps giving me meaning? And I think that seems to be a very sort of autumnal life stage thing to do.
Truly, it's great to hear it. It's really good to hear it. So we've come round to winter, and the word on the menstruality street is that it's all about rest, but rest looks different for everybody. So I'd really love to hear what rest looks like for you.
Yeah, I might go a bit counter narrative here, because there has been a lot about how we need to rest during our winter. Now, I've been fortunate so far that in my cycling years, I haven't had very heavy periods. I don't get cramping. It's changing as I've gone into perimenopause. I've started to get spotting. Things are changing, but for myself, it's actually more the premenstruum, I would say, that I need to sometimes stop and rest. It's when that overwhelm comes and that irritation. And from an exercise or like a training perspective, that fits as well. From a physiological point of view, it's harder for us to take on nutrients in that premenstruum. So you can imagine that, because sometimes life is busy and I try my best to eat well and all my leafy greens and things, but it doesn't always happen. And so, maybe you're not eating the ideal diet, the ideal nutrition, and then your body's not actually able to take in as well. that could contribute to you feeling more tired in that stage.
Yeah.
So wherever the rest is that I feel I need, one of the things is walking. So my daughter has gone into her second year of secondary school, and she could walk to the bus stop by herself. It's about, I don't know, 10-minute walk down to the bus stop. But I like to go and do it with her every morning, and then I pick her up in the afternoon. So I do that walk twice a day during the week. And that for me is like a sort of gently active rest, because I leave my phone at home, and I, particularly in the morning, I'm really aware of the quality of light. And I think as the days are beginning to get shorter, when I'm walking back up to the house, I'm often facing towards the sun. And the quality of light just changes over the year. And I think it's really important for the circadian rhythms that you kind of early in the morning, getting kind of that light level. So I'm sure that helps me get a better night's sleep as well. So that's one thing, walking. Over the summer, I'd often go out after dinner for a walk around the neighbourhood just to digest and kind of chat as we're walking along. Another thing
is that as a family? Do you go out as a family?
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. Which has been nice, because it's sometimes hard to convince the girls to go on a kind of walk into the countryside. They love it once they're there, but there's often that kind of, let's peel you away from your device. But a walk around the neighbourhood, they really enjoy. They love it. So another thing that I've noticed really helps in terms of rest is booking self-care in with a reflexologist. That's been a long-term thing that I've done, and also a chiropractor. If I'm at home, there's always that temptation to, I just should kind of put the laundry out, or there's always something to be done. And I do carve out time for myself at home. Big yoga nidra enthusiast. But I think particularly because I use my body for my work as a yoga teacher, I just feel like I really need to look after my body through this transition, in particular with perimenopause. And so just having that time where I go, and both of those, my reflexologist, my chiropractor, become really good friends. And it's also a kind of opportunity just to, this is going on. And it's like a little, well-being safety valve.
Well-being safety valve. I love that.
But I think it's whatever people want to do. I think it's because I book it into my diary. And then it's there, and there would be a cancellation fee, and so I go.
Commitment.
It's a commitment to my well-being. Whereas otherwise, yes, I could say, right, every Friday afternoon I'm going to make time to, I don't know, have a bath in winter before the children get back from school. But I know that would probably get squeezed by some last-minute emails before the weekend, unfortunately.
Keeping it realistic. And so nourishing. I'm hearing some real nourishment going on with time for yourself, time with therapists, time with family. There's almost like a 360 nourishment that I'm hearing.
And sometimes I think it's a difference between mental rest and physical rest. So again, going to the gym, I find it's for me a mental rest. I don't have a podcast on. I don't even listen to music. There'll be background music in the gym, but it's just a chance to completely switch off from devices, and being there and whatever kind of workout I'm doing at the gym, it's my time to switch off mentally. So I might be physically active, but mentally I'm resting.
Beautifully balanced. So we're coming out of winter, however your winter looks like, and we're heading into spring. What are the challenges that you find in post-menstruation, pre-ovulation time of your cycle?
I think the biggest challenge at the moment for me is because my cycles have shortened, I don't get much of a spring.
Okay.
So there's just not much time to spend there. The inner spring has always been a really creative time for me. So the challenge now is to make the most of that little window, to tune in and see what comes through. I think the challenge is that when you do have lots of ideas, and I have a lovely colleague, Julia Davis, who I work with at the Yoga Teachers Forum. She's full of ideas. So between us, we just generate lots of ideas. It's then that sort of filtering of, well, what am I going to go forwards with? That might be a fantastic idea, but you don't necessarily have to go forwards with it. So what I tend to do is try and sit on something for a whole cycle.
Okay.
And then naturally, some things will just drop out. You're like, well, yeah, but it's not really alive for me anymore. And then other things you'd still get excited about, and you might start putting a bit of energy to see whether it can go somewhere. Yeah, it's not.
Is there a time in your cycle when it becomes the most clear what you would take forward?
Not summer, because I tend to just want to put energy behind something. So it's in maybe in autumn, where you're really realistic about the time you actually have.
Yeah.
And then in the rest phase, where you're letting go of it all actually for a moment. Mm-hmm. And then when you come out of it, you come out of that rest, whether it's a 20-minute nidra or whatever it might be, I think often in that liminal state, I get clarity.
Yeah.
So I might have been puzzling over, well, how could I take this forwards? And then I come around and like, oh yeah, that's how to do it.
So that's back into spring?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's almost like waiting, coming back into the ideas, and then you might get a new sense of how to take it forwards if you're going to take it forwards. But I remember, I'll give you an example, a concrete example. So this wasn't a yoga nidra, but one day I was putting my younger one to bed, and we often follow, we both, now she's 10, so we'll both be reading our own books, and then we'll put the light out, we're just chatting about the day, and that's when she'll kind of share stuff that's happened. And then I sort of drift into this liminal state, a little bit like yoga nidra. And then I realized that she'd fallen asleep, and I'd been sort of pondering, this is meant that years ago, actually, this particular thing happened, but I'd been thinking about, there didn't seem to be quite the book that people were looking for a younger age, to begin to explain about the body and explain to young children about periods. And there's a book that we really loved, called, I think it's called Press Here. And it's a very kind of, like, before people had device, you'd press on different buttons, and it was really fun and active. And we'd been looking at that, and I kind of drifted off a bit while she was falling to sleep. And when I came back around afterwards, I just had, it was like this download. I could just see exactly the book that would fit the hole that I'd found. And that's how Ruby Luna Curious Journey came around, because I was like, I want to make it active. So it's got actions in it, and it's got pictures, and it just came to me. I was like, yes.
That's so gorgeous to hear how Ruby Luna, the seeds of Ruby Luna.
Yeah, how she came about.
Oh.
But I think it's so important to create those spaces, because we are in such a busy lifestyle, and we're just bombarded by social media, and it can be hard to find space. But when you do open up the space, your brain does amazing things.
Truly. Yeah. So I mean, that's the key, isn't it? And with perimenopause sitting in the background of the conversation, is slowing down, how much clarity we get when we slow down, or are able to head into that liminal space.
Or another example I'd like to share is, so Monday was a women's circle that I run, and that made it 9 years it's been going. So I'm like just so proud that it's been going all that time through the pandemic, and it's been in different places. And for me also, that is a way that I rest, is coming into a women's circle, and coming into a kind of different space with others. And I often find there's a lot of validation that happens in those circles, because you might share something, and it happened on Monday, and I thought I'd had an individual experience, then it turned out that 4 others in the circle had a really similar experience. It was to do with a particular venue, very concrete kind of experience. Wow, No, there was me just thinking that was something I was sort of processing, but all these others,
Yeah.
And that witnessing and just being heard in what happened. That is like a deep source of rest and healing and renewal for me.
I really hear that. And to give credit to you, that's you holding the circle safely enough for that to be able to come out, which segues beautifully into to asking you where viewers and listeners can find out more about your work.
Yeah, I do lots of different things. So you can kind of have a flavour of what those things are at my website, tessavenutisanderson.co.uk. But if you're interested in more like trainings and things, you can find me on the Yoga Teachers Forum. So we have a circle holding fundamentals coming up and all the way through to a retreat. So a deep immersion, which we're really excited about. But yes, have a look at the books that I've done, because they're all about empowering people around their bodies, whether you're a child through to kind of being older. That's something that's so important to me. That's where a lot of the ideas come up, and I find that energy because it's so important to me that people feel knowledgeable about their bodies. And that's really the main thing that cycle awareness has given to me is we're all different, our cycles are different, and it's been such a tool of self-discovery that I think is sort of holding me steady as things start to change into perimenopause. And I don't think it's ever too late to start tracking. So even if things have gone a little haywire and cycles are irregular, writing things down will help you make sense, I think, of what's happening, give you a new perspective.
So important. And yes, starting when they're on their curious journey at 5 years old. So it's normalized. So the language is normalized. It's such a gift that you have brought with your books, Tessa.
Thank you.
So if you would love to explore your own seasons and you are now navigating perimenopause, you might love to enjoy our Womankind self-directed online course, Perimenopause Unwrapped. And it gives you an opportunity to dive deeper into the inner workings of perimenopause and how you might bring compassion and care to this often challenging time of life. So you can go for more information to woman-kind.co.uk. That's woman-kind.co.uk. Or you can drop us an email and you'll find all the details below. So thank you so much, Tessa. It's been wonderful to hear your cycle adventures and what you bring
for having
to the
me.
world. Take care then. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.